The harsh alarm sliced through Dr. Marcus Patel's sleep like a scalpel, yanking him from dreams of cool water and green valleys. His quarters at Outpost Helios were barely large enough to house his cot and research equipment, but the cramped space had become home during his 3-year assignment studying the unique extremophile bacteria of the frontier deserts. "Incoming priority transmission," announced the Outpost's AI in its perpetually calm voice. "Origin, Northern Argent Desert Research Station. Classification, Emergency." Marcus sat up immediately, fully alert. The Northern Station was a remote outpost established to study the mysterious crystalline formations unique to this planet. "Accept," Marcus commanded, his voice still rough with sleep. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing an alien face with silvery blue skin and luminous eyes, features he recognized as belonging to the Neridian species. Even through the distortion and static, Marcus could see she was severely injured, a deep violet gash across her temple, eyes wide with panic. "This is Kalara Nox, sabotage, station destroyed, hiding in emergency bunker, oxygen, maybe 5 days." The transmission broke repeatedly, fragments of words lost to interference. "Coordinates attached, please, find my sister Elara at your outpost, only she knows the way." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by a set of coordinates and a scrolling medical readout that made Marcus's blood run cold. Severe dehydration. Internal bleeding. Multiple fractures. The alien physiology readings were critical even by Neridian standards. Marcus's hands were steady as he transferred the data to his tablet, a surgeon's hands, trained not to tremble even in crisis. The coordinates placed Kalara 2,100 kilometers away, deep in the most hostile section of the Argent Desert, a region so inhospitable that even the hardy survey drones rarely returned intact. The outpost's computer calculated the fastest route instantly, estimated travel time via standard transport, 14 days. Too long. She had 5 days of oxygen at most. Marcus punched the intercom. "Commander Reeves, emergency situation. Requesting immediate evacuation transport for the Northern Station." The commander's response came quickly. "Negative, Doctor. The sandstorm season's begun. All aerial transports are grounded for at least 2 weeks. No exceptions." Marcus ran his hands through his dark hair, mind racing through alternatives. There had to be a way. He pulled up the outpost personnel files, searching for the name mentioned in the transmission, Elara Nox. The file loaded quickly, Elara Nox. Species, Neridian. Former pilot for the Interstellar Exploration Corps. Specialized in desert navigation and extreme terrain survival. Current assignment, xenogeology and security. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in the outpost's garage facing a tall, slender alien woman with silvery blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the harsh lights. Her eyes were entirely black except for flecks of silver that looked like distant stars, and the fine ridges along her temples pulsed with a faint luminescence, a Neridian physiological response to stress, Marcus knew from his xenobiology studies. "You received the transmission from my sister," Elara said. It wasn't a question. Her voice had the characteristic melodic quality of her species, but edged with steel. "Yes," Marcus replied. "I'm Dr. Marcus Patel. I'm sorry about your sister." "She's not dead yet," Elara said with unexpected fierceness. "But she will be if we waste time with condolences." "Commander Reeves says no transports can fly in this weather," Marcus explained. "Is there any other way to reach her in time?" Elara's star-flecked eyes narrowed. "There is one way." She walked to the back of the garage and entered a code into a hidden panel. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing what appeared to be a hybrid vehicle unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, part land cruiser, part alien technology, with articulated wheels and a sleek, predatory profile. "The Dusk Runner," Elara said, her hand caressing the metallic surface with unexpected tenderness. Built with both human and Neridian technology. My personal vessel. It can traverse terrain nothing else could manage. Even 2,100 kilometers of the Argent Desert? Marcus asked skeptically. Theoretically, yes, Elara admitted. Though no one has ever attempted such a journey without stops. Theoretically isn't good enough, Marcus said, checking his medical tablet again. Your sister's readings are critical. I didn't say we wouldn't try. Elara's ridges glowed brighter. I'm going regardless. The question is, why are you here, human? Marcus straightened. I'm a doctor. A xenobiologist with specialization in Neridian physiology. When we reach your sister, she'll need immediate medical attention. Elara studied him with those unsettling starfield eyes. The journey would be brutal for a human. My species evolved in harsh desert conditions, yours did not. Temperatures swing from blistering heat to freezing cold. There are dust storms that could strip your skin. Terrain that has killed experienced navigators. I don't care, Marcus said firmly. I took an oath to preserve life, all life, not just human. And I'm more useful to your sister alive when we arrive than staying behind where it's safe. Something flickered across Elara's alien features, respect, perhaps. Pack one bag, she said finally. Medical supplies only. We leave in 20 minutes. As Marcus rushed back to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was committing to something far beyond a rescue mission. The way Elara had looked at him, assessing, alien, intense, suggested a journey that would test more than just his survival skills. He packed with methodical precision, emergency medical kit calibrated for Neridian physiology, water purification tablets, stimulants, regenerative compounds. As he shouldered his bag, Marcus glanced at the framed medical oath on his wall, the interspecies version he'd sworn to upon completing his xenobiology training. All life is worthy of preservation, he recited quietly. All suffering worthy of alleviation. With one last glance around his quarters, Dr. Marcus Patel headed out to join an alien woman on what might be the most dangerous journey of his life. The Dusk Runner roared across the hardpan desert floor, its articulated wheels adapting instantly to the changing terrain. Marcus gripped the passenger harness as the vehicle took a steep dune at full speed, momentarily becoming airborne before landing with precision that defied the laws of physics as he understood them. Elara's hands danced across the control panel, three-fingered, with an extra joint that allowed for greater dexterity than human digits. The luminescent ridges along her temples pulsed with concentration, casting a faint silvery glow on the dashboard. We've covered over 300 kilometers, Marcus noted, checking their progress on the navigation display. Impressive speed. We're still in the outskirts, Elara replied without taking her eyes off the windshield. The real challenge begins when we hit the Diamond Flats. The sand there contains microscopic crystalline particles that shred conventional tires and clog air intakes. Marcus studied her profile as she drove. The alien beauty of her features was undeniable, the elegant sweep of her cranial ridges, the star-like flecks in her obsidian eyes, the subtle shimmer of her skin that seemed to shift colors with her emotions. Currently, it held a tense, bluish-silver hue. Your species evolved on a desert world, he asked, partly out of scientific curiosity, partly to distract himself from the increasingly dangerous terrain. Half desert, half ocean, Elara corrected. The Neridian homeworld has extreme geography, vast seas bordered by endless deserts with virtually no transitional zones. Our ancestors adapted to both. She gestured at the gill-like structures partially visible along her neck. We can extract oxygen from both water and air, and our skin retains moisture better than most species. The vehicle suddenly lurched as they hit a hidden depression. Marcus's head nearly struck the ceiling despite the harness. Sorry, Elara muttered. Terrain mapping is spotty out here. Marcus checked his tablet, displaying Kalara's vital signs transmitted from the emergency bunker. Her oxygen saturation is dropping. We need to maintain this pace if possible. Elara nodded grimly, pushing the Dusk Runner faster. As the twin suns climbed higher, the temperature inside the vehicle rose despite the cooling systems. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, while Elara appeared completely comfortable in the increasingly oven-like conditions. "You should hydrate more frequently," she observed. "Your species loses moisture at an alarming rate." Marcus obediently took a long drink from his canteen. "How long until we need to stop for the night?" "We don't," Elara said firmly. "The Dusk Runner can continue through the night, and I don't require sleep as often as humans." "Even you need rest eventually," Marcus pointed out. "And driving through the night in this terrain is suicide." Elara's skin darkened slightly, a sign of irritation, Marcus guessed. "My sister has less than 5 days. And she'll have no chance if we crash and die because you're too exhausted to drive properly," Marcus countered. "I'm a doctor. I know the limits of biology, even alien biology." Their argument was cut short as the horizon suddenly darkened. What Marcus had taken for distant mountains was moving, a wall of swirling sand rushing toward them at terrifying speed. "Sandstorm!" Elara hissed, swerving the Dusk Runner toward a cluster of massive rock formations. "Category 5 by the look of it. We need shelter now." She drove with reckless precision, weaving between towering stone pillars until she found what she was looking for, a shallow cave in the base of the largest formation. The Dusk Runner barely fit through the entrance, scraping its sides as Elara guided it into the rocky shelter. The storm hit moments after they were safely inside, a howling fury that blotted out the suns and turned day to twilight. Sand pelted the vehicle like artillery fire. "Well," Elara said dryly, powering down the engines, "it seems you'll get your rest stop after all." Marcus chuckled despite himself. "Not exactly how I would have planned it." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the storm rage outside. The temperature in the vehicle began to drop rapidly as the sun's light was blocked by the massive storm. "How long will it last?" Marcus asked, already calculating the delay's impact on their rescue timeline. "Impossible to predict. Hours. Maybe a day." Elara's star-flecked eyes reflected the dim emergency lighting. "We should conserve power and body heat." She reached into a compartment behind her seat and pulled out thermal blankets. As she handed one to Marcus, their fingers brushed. An unexpected charge seemed to pass between them, something Marcus hadn't anticipated. Elara's skin briefly shifted to a purplish hue before she quickly withdrew her hand. "Your body temperature is dropping," she noted clinically, though her voice carried an unfamiliar undertone. "Yours isn't," Marcus observed. "Another Neridian adaptation?" "We regulate internal temperature more efficiently than humans," Elara explained, moving to the rear compartment of the vehicle. "But even we have limits." She unfolded a thermal sleeping platform designed for long-haul journeys. It was barely large enough for two. "Body heat conservation would be more efficient if we share the sleeping space," she stated matter-of-factly, though the purplish tinge returned to her silvery skin. "Unless human cultural taboos prevent such arrangements?" Marcus smiled slightly. "I'm a doctor. Practical solutions trump cultural taboos in survival situations." The storm intensified, rocking the vehicle. The temperature continued to drop as night fell, combining with the storm to create near-Arctic conditions. They lay side by side under the thermal blankets, the strange intimacy of the situation not lost on either of them. "Your heartbeat is elevated," Elara observed quietly, the luminescent ridges on her temples casting gentle light in the darkness. "A normal physiological response to stress," Marcus replied, though he knew it wasn't entirely true. The alien warmth of her body next to his was affecting him in unexpected ways. "Neridians don't normally form close bonds with other species," Elara said suddenly. "We're taught that our evolutionary paths are too divergent for meaningful connection." And what do you believe? Marcus asked. Ilara turned to face him, those star-flecked eyes searching his face. I believe the universe is too vast for such limited thinking. Outside, the storm howled with increasing fury, but inside the Dusk Runner, a different kind of tension was building. When Ilara's three-fingered hand hesitantly touched his face, Marcus didn't pull away. The contact sent an almost electric sensation across his skin. Your biochemistry is responding to mine, she whispered, scientific curiosity mixing with something more primal. Fascinating. Is this common between our species? Marcus asked, his medical training suddenly overshadowed by more personal interests. No, Ilara admitted. This is unexpected. Their first kiss was a careful exploration, human lips against the cooler, firmer mouth of a Neridian. The physiological differences were immediately apparent, yet somehow complementary. Ilara's skin shifted through shades of blue and purple, the bioluminescent ridges along her body brightening with each touch. Marcus drew back slightly. We should consider if this is just adrenaline and survival instinct. The psychological impact of our mission. Ilara silenced him with another kiss, more confident than the first. My species doesn't rationalize desire, Doctor. We acknowledge it. The confines of the vehicle made every movement intimate as clothing was carefully set aside. The alien cartography of Ilara's body was both strange and beautiful to Marcus, the subtle patterns on her silvery blue skin, the luminescent points along her spine, the elegant strength in her lithe form. His medical knowledge of Neridian physiology provided theoretical understanding, but the reality was far more complex and wondrous. Ilara's touch was both curious and knowing, discovering human sensitivity with scientific precision that quickly transformed into something more passionate. They moved together as the storm raged outside, two beings from different worlds finding unexpected harmony. The bioluminescence in Ilara's skin intensified with her pleasure, bathing them in ethereal light that pulsed and flowed. Afterward, they lay entwined, the Duskrunner's systems humming quietly around them. The storm had begun to abate, the howling reduced to a mournful whisper. That was. Marcus began, searching for the right words. Scientifically fascinating? Ilara suggested with unexpected humor, the stars in her eyes seeming to twinkle. Marcus laughed softly. I was going to say extraordinary, but yes, also fascinating. Ilara's expression became serious again. This changes nothing about our mission. My sister still comes first. Of course, Marcus agreed. But perhaps it changes something about us. Ilara didn't respond, but her hand found his in the darkness, 3 fingers interlacing with 5 in a gesture that bridged their differences more eloquently than words. As they drifted into much-needed sleep, the navigation system quietly updated their route, calculating the delays caused by the storm. The path to Kalara had just become more difficult, but neither of them was quite as alone on the journey as they had been before. The Dusk Runner emerged from the rock shelter into a transformed landscape. The sandstorm had resculpted the terrain completely, erasing their tracks and creating new dunes that towered like liquid mountains frozen in time. Navigation needs recalibration, Ilara murmured, her fingers moving rapidly across the control panel. The bioluminescent ridges along her temples pulsed with concentration, slightly brighter than normal. Marcus noticed she'd been avoiding his gaze since they'd awakened, tangled together on the narrow sleeping platform. Ilara, he began, about last night. We should focus on the mission, she interrupted, her skin shifting to a cooler blue. The storm cost us 7 hours. Kalara's vital signs are weakening. Marcus checked his medical tablet, frowning at the readings. Her oxygen levels are dangerously low. And there's evidence of internal bleeding. Then we keep moving, Ilara said firmly, engaging the Duskrunner's engines with more force than necessary. They drove in tense silence for hours, the twin suns beating down mercilessly. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous, crystalline formations jutting from the sand like massive shards of broken glass, deep ravines appearing without warning, sand so fine it behaved almost like liquid. Marcus monitored their course on the navigation system. "We're making a significant detour from the direct route." "The direct route would kill us," Elara replied tersely. "There's a section ahead, the locals call it the Glass Sea. The sand is superheated by geothermal vents beneath the surface. Even the Duskrunner couldn't cross it." As they skirted the edge of this deadly zone, heat shimmers distorted the horizon. Occasionally, they glimpsed bubbling patches of sand where the surface temperature must have exceeded several hundred degrees. The Duskrunner's cooling systems strained to capacity. Sweat poured down Marcus's face and neck, his clothing soaked through despite the environmental controls. Elara appeared less affected, though Marcus noted the increasing frequency with which she dipped her fingertips into a small reservoir of water built into the control panel, a Neridian adaptation, absorbing moisture directly through specialized cells in their hands. "You need to hydrate more," he told her, offering his water canteen. She hesitated before accepting it, their fingers brushing momentarily. Her skin tone shifted briefly to that same purplish hue he'd noticed the night before. "Thank you," she said quietly. "The air here is particularly desiccating, even for my species." By late afternoon, the Duskrunner's systems were showing alarming temperature readings. An amber warning light began to flash on the dashboard. "Engine coolant approaching critical levels," Elara announced, her voice tense. "We need to find shelter and let the systems recover." Marcus scanned the barren landscape ahead. "There's nothing but sand for kilometers." There, Elara pointed to a barely visible smudge on the horizon. "The scanner is picking up vegetation and water. Some kind of oasis." As they approached, the smudge resolved into a cluster of strange, twisted trees surrounding a small pool of water. Rock formations created natural shade, and even from a distance, the temperature readings showed a dramatic drop within the oasis boundaries. Elara guided the Duskrunner into the shade of the largest rock formation and powered down the engines. The sudden silence was almost disorienting after hours of mechanical noise. "The coolant systems need at least 4 hours to recover," she said, checking the diagnostics. "We should rest while we can." The oasis air was noticeably cooler as they stepped out of the vehicle. Strange, bulbous plants with iridescent leaves surrounded the water pool, which shimmered with an unusual bluish tint. Marcus approached the pool cautiously, scanner in hand. "The water contains high mineral content, but it's non-toxic for both our species. Some kind of natural filtration system through the rock bed." "Neridian legends speak of desert sanctuaries," Elara said, kneeling beside the pool. "Places where the planet itself offers refuge to travelers." She submerged her hands in the water, and Marcus watched in fascination as her skin seemed to drink it in, the silvery blue tone becoming more vibrant. "It's beautiful here," Marcus said, taking in the alien landscape that somehow managed to evoke the tranquility of Earth's natural sanctuaries despite its alien features. Elara nodded, her expression softening for the first time since they'd left the rock shelter that morning. "My sister and I found a place like this once, when we were studying the Northern Territories. We spent 3 days cataloging the unique ecosystem." "You're close to her," Marcus observed. "She's the only family I have left," Elara replied, her star-flecked eyes reflecting the water's surface. "Our parents died when our research vessel was caught in an ion storm. We were raised by the Scientific Academy." She looked up at him. "Humans place great importance on familial bonds, don't they?" Marcus nodded, sitting beside her at the pool's edge. "Generally, yes. Though my own experience was complicated. My parents were both brilliant xenobiologists who were rarely home. They valued scientific discovery above personal connections. Yet you became a doctor," Elara noted. "You chose to heal rather than merely study." "Perhaps in reaction to their approach," Marcus admitted. I wanted my work to have immediate impact on individual lives, not just advance theoretical knowledge. As they talked, the suns began to set, casting the oasis in extraordinary colors. The strange plants began to glow softly, responding to the changing light. The temperature dropped rapidly, a common phenomenon in desert environments. "We should set up camp," Elara said, standing. "The nights here can be dangerously cold." They established a small camp near the Dusk Runner, unfolding thermal shelters and activating a portable heating unit. As darkness fell completely, the oasis transformed, plants glowing with bioluminescence similar to Elara's, casting the entire area in soft, ethereal light. "It's responding to our presence," Elara explained, noticing Marcus's wonder. "Many desert organisms evolved to react to the electrical fields generated by living beings. It helps them conserve energy when no one is present to appreciate their display." They ate a simple meal of nutrient bars, sitting side by side beneath the glowing canopy of alien plants. The day's tension gradually dissipated in the peaceful surroundings. "About last night," Marcus said finally. "I want you to know I don't regret it." Elara was quiet for a long moment. "Neridians don't have casual physical encounters," she said at last. "What happened between us? It has significance in my culture." "I wouldn't want it to be casual," Marcus replied softly. "Even across species, connection is rare. Special." Elara turned to face him, her luminescent ridges pulsing gently. "There are those who would consider such a connection inappropriate. Impossible, even." "And what do you think?" Marcus asked. Instead of answering with words, Elara moved closer, her cool fingers tracing the contours of his face. The touch sent pleasant shivers across his skin, a unique sensation he'd never experienced with human partners. When their lips met, it felt both familiar and wonderfully alien. They undressed each other slowly beneath the glowing canopy, the oasis providing a natural privacy that the confines of the Dusk Runner had lacked. In the bioluminescent light, Elara's body was even more beautiful, the patterns on her silvery blue skin shifting and flowing with her emotions, the delicate ridges along her spine and shoulders pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Marcus explored her body with both lovers' passion and doctor's fascination, discovering how different pressure and touch affected the luminosity of her skin. Elara was equally curious, her three-fingered hands finding human sensitivities with instinctive precision. When they joined, the bioluminescence in Elara's skin intensified dramatically, bathing them both in waves of light that ebbed and flowed with their movements. The alienness of their anatomies created novel sensations, challenges overcome with attentive exploration and wordless communication. Afterward, they lay together beneath the glowing plants, the cool desert air a pleasant contrast to their heated skin. Elara's body curled against his, her temperature naturally cooler than a human's but warming wherever they touched. "The oasis is affecting us," she murmured, tracing patterns on his chest. "These places are known to enhance empathic connections. Some xenobiologists believe they evolved as interspecies communication sites. Are you suggesting this is just some kind of botanical influence?" Marcus asked, a note of humor in his voice. Elara's skin flushed purple briefly. "No. But it may be amplifying what was already there." As they drifted toward sleep, a soft chime from Marcus's tablet pulled them back to reality. Kalara's vital signs had taken a sudden dip. "We need to move at first light," Elara said, instantly alert. "Her condition is deteriorating faster than expected." Marcus checked the readings with professional focus, despite their intimate situation. "The internal bleeding is putting pressure on her respiratory system. She's compensating for now, but not for long." They reluctantly separated, gathering their scattered clothing and returning to the practical concerns of their mission. As they prepared for a few hours of necessary sleep, Elara suddenly froze, her head tilted as if listening. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "We're not alone," she whispered, pointing to a small device partially buried beneath one of the glowing plants. That's a surveillance transmitter. Military grade. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. Who would be monitoring an oasis in the middle of nowhere? The same people who might have sabotaged my sister's research station, Elara said grimly. We need to check the Dusk Runner. Now. Dawn found them racing across a vast salt flat, the Dusk Runner pushing its modified engines to their limits. They'd discovered 3 tracking devices hidden on their vehicle during the night search, all carefully removed and left behind at the oasis. Whoever placed those trackers knew exactly what they were looking for, Elara said, her voice tight with anger. They targeted the Dusk Runner's blind spots, places only someone familiar with Neridian technology would know to check. Could it be corporate espionage? Marcus suggested, bracing himself as they hit a rough patch at high speed. Your sister's research might have commercial applications. Kalara wasn't researching anything with obvious profit potential, Elara replied. She was studying ancient crystal formations, their growth patterns, composition, possible biological origins. The Dusk Runner suddenly lurched violently, a warning siren blaring from the control panel. One of the specialized tires had ruptured, sending them into a dangerous spin across the salt flat. Elara fought the controls with expert precision, eventually bringing the vehicle to a shuddering halt. Acrid smoke rose from the damaged wheel assembly. How bad? Marcus asked as they climbed out to inspect the damage. Elara's expression was grim. Bad. The crystalline shards penetrated the outer casing and damaged the adaptive suspension. She knelt beside the wounded vehicle, her 3-fingered hands moving with mechanical precision as she assessed the damage. Can you repair it? Yes, but it will take time. Hours we don't have. She glanced at the medical tablet showing her sister's deteriorating condition. They worked side by side under the merciless suns, Elara handling the technical repairs while Marcus passed tools and held components in place. The temperature climbed relentlessly, the salt flat offering no shade or relief. Your skin is burning, Elara noted with concern, touching Marcus's reddening forearm. Your melanin production can't keep pace with the radiation. Marcus nodded, wiping sweat from his eyes. I'll apply the medical-grade sunblock again, but it's not designed for these conditions. By midday, the repairs were complete, but both were showing signs of strain. Marcus's skin was painfully red despite protection, and Elara's normally lustrous blue-silver complexion had dulled to an ashen gray, a sign of severe dehydration in her species. Back in the vehicle, they shared the last of their filtered water. The life support systems could produce more, but the process was slow and energy-intensive. We need to conserve power, Elara said, programming a more efficient route into the navigation system. We're still over 800 kilometers from Kalara's position. As they drove, Marcus noticed Elara's hands trembling slightly on the controls. You need rest, he said firmly. Your species may have desert adaptations, but you're pushing beyond your physiological limits. I can't rest, she snapped, her voice uncharacteristically harsh. Every minute counts. And if you collapse from exhaustion, who will drive? Marcus countered. I need you to be a scientist right now, not just a sister. Assess your own condition objectively. Elara's star-flecked eyes flashed with momentary anger before resignation set in. You're right, she admitted. Another 2 hours, then we'll switch. The Dusk Runner has an autopilot for stable terrain. The landscape gradually changed as they continued northward, the salt flats giving way to rock-strewn badlands where jagged formations rose like the spines of enormous beasts. The navigation system warned of narrow passages ahead, places where the Dusk Runner would barely fit between towering cliffs. This route seems unnecessarily difficult, Marcus observed, studying the projected path. It's a trade-off, Elara explained. The most direct route crosses territories controlled by the Dust clans, nomadic tribes who aren't particularly welcoming to outsiders. This way is harder on the vehicle but safer for us. As they entered the first narrow canyon, shadows enveloped them, providing brief relief from the relentless suns. The Duskrunner's engines echoed off the close stone walls, the sound unnervingly loud in the confined space. "We're being followed," Elara said suddenly, her eyes on the rear sensors. Marcus turned to look at the display. 3 rapidly moving signatures were closing in from behind. "Dust Clan raiders," Elara confirmed grimly. "Light attack vehicles. Faster than the Dusk Runner but less durable. Can we outrun them?" "Not in these canyons. We'll have to outmaneuver them." She increased their speed, taking the narrow turns with dangerous precision. The pursuers gained steadily, the lead vehicle now visible in their rear cameras, a skeletal craft of salvaged metal with massive engines and a mounted weapon. "They're within weapons range," Marcus warned as a flash of energy struck the rock wall beside them. Elara executed a series of evasive maneuvers, the Dusk Runner scraping against the canyon walls as they took turns at unsurvivable speeds. A second energy blast hit their rear deflector, alarms blaring throughout the cabin. "There's a wider section ahead," Elara said, her voice deadly calm despite the chaos. "When I tell you, hit the red emergency button on your side panel." They burst into a small circular clearing between canyon walls. The 3 pursuing vehicles spread out behind them, preparing for what appeared to be a coordinated attack. "Now!" Elara shouted. Marcus slammed his palm onto the red button. The Dusk Runner shuddered as hidden panels opened along its sides, releasing a dense cloud of metallic particles that filled the entire clearing. The pursuing vehicles immediately lost visibility, crashing into rock walls and each other. "Neridian defense technology," Elara explained as they accelerated away. "The particles disrupt most targeting systems and temporarily blind unprotected eyes." They emerged from the canyons onto an elevated plateau, pushing the Dusk Runner to maximum speed across the open terrain. Only when the sensors confirmed they weren't being followed did Elara finally reduce their pace. "That was impressive," Marcus said, his heart still racing from the encounter. "A standard evasion technique," Elara replied modestly, though Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders gradually easing. The Dusk Runner was originally designed for scientific expeditions in contested territories. As evening approached, they found shelter in the lee of a massive rock formation. The Duskrunner's systems needed cooling after the extreme demands of the chase, and both of them required rest. They sat together in the open hatch of the vehicle, watching the sun set in spectacular fashion. The stress of the day, the narrowness of their escape, and the continuing urgency of their mission created a strange, suspended moment, time simultaneously stretched and compressed. "We're still going to make it," Marcus said, checking Kalara's vital signs on his tablet. "Her condition has stabilized. The emergency bunker's medical systems are compensating well." Elara nodded, her expression haunted. "But who sabotaged her station? Who's trying to stop us from reaching her? What could she have possibly discovered that would be worth killing for?" Marcus had no answers, only theories. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Something in his tone made Elara turn to him, those star-flecked eyes searching his face. "Marcus, when this is over, if we survive, what happens to this?" She gestured between them. "What do you want to happen?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she admitted. "Interspecies relationships are rare. Complicated. My people would not approve. And do their opinions matter more than yours?" Before she could answer, a particularly violent gust of wind rocked the vehicle. The desert night had arrived in force, bringing plummeting temperatures and howling winds. They retreated inside, securing the hatch against the elements. The Duskrunner's interior felt different now, a space transformed by their shared experiences, by the intimacy they'd discovered. "We should rest while we can," Elara said softly, preparing the sleeping platform. When she turned back to him, the professional facade had fallen away completely. Her skin shimmered with emotion, the bioluminescent ridges along her body brightening in the dimmed cabin. They came together with desperate intensity, the day's dangers fueling a need for connection that transcended species barriers. Their movements were more confident now, familiar with each other's bodies yet still discovering new sensitivities. Elara's skin glowed brighter as Marcus traced the patterns along her spine, finding the particularly sensitive nodes where ridge lines intersected. Her three-fingered hands explored him with equal curiosity, the extra joint allowing touches no human hand could replicate. Their coupling was more intense than before, urgent, almost desperate, as if the universe might tear them apart at any moment. The bioluminescence in Elara's skin pulsed with increasing brightness, casting wave-like patterns across the cabin's interior. When they finally found release together, Elara's entire body flared with light so bright Marcus had to close his eyes. The luminescence slowly faded as they lay entwined, heartbeats gradually returning to normal rhythms. That was. Marcus began, struggling to find words. A Neridian light merge, Elara said softly, seeming both surprised and slightly embarrassed. It's rare. Only happens with significant emotional connection. The implications hung between them, unspoken but understood. Whatever was developing between them went beyond physical attraction or circumstantial proximity. As they drifted toward sleep, Elara's tablet suddenly chimed with an incoming transmission. She sat up immediately, activating the screen. "It's from Kalara," she said, her voice tight with hope and fear. A data packet attached to her vital sign transmissions. They huddled together over the tablet as the data decrypted. Images appeared, crystal formations deep underground, strange markings that appeared artificial rather than natural, and finally, a partial message from Kalara. Not natural formations. Evidence of ancient technology, possibly millions of years old. Energy readings off the scale. Military consortium already moving to secure the site. They don't understand the danger. If activated incorrectly, the crystals could trigger a chain reaction across the entire. The message ended abruptly. "That's what this is about," Elara whispered. She found something. Something dangerous enough that someone wanted to silence her before she could report it. Marcus studied the images with scientific interest. These formations, they're unlike anything in the xenoarchaeological record. "And now we know why we're being followed," Elara said grimly. "If a military consortium is involved, they'll have resources far beyond those raiders. We need to reach Kalara before they realize she's still alive and transmitting data." The gravity of their situation descended upon them both. Their journey had just become more than a rescue mission, it was now potentially a race to prevent something far worse. The final day of their journey dawned blood-red, the twin suns rising through a haze of airborne dust that painted the landscape in apocalyptic hues. They'd driven through the night, taking turns at the controls while the other grabbed brief periods of fitful sleep. Kalara's vital signs had weakened significantly overnight. The emergency bunker's oxygen supply was nearly depleted, its medical systems struggling to compensate for her deteriorating condition. "We're less than 300 kilometers away," Elara said, her voice rough with fatigue. The luminescent ridges along her temples had dimmed to barely visible levels, a concerning sign of extreme exhaustion in her species. Marcus checked the medical readouts again, his trained eye noting the dangerous patterns. "Her cardiovascular system is showing signs of imminent failure. The internal bleeding has worsened." "Then we push harder," Elara replied, increasing their speed despite the Duskrunner's warning indicators. The terrain before them was the most treacherous yet, a region known as the Shattered Lands, where tectonic instability had created a nightmare landscape of crevasses, unstable rock formations, and superheated geothermal vents. No mapped roads existed. Few had ever attempted to cross it and return to tell the tale. "The Dusk Runner can handle it," Elara insisted when Marcus expressed concern. "It was built for exactly this kind of challenge." As they ventured deeper into the shattered lands, the vehicle's structural integrity was tested beyond its design parameters. Multiple times they nearly toppled into abyssal crevasses, saved only by Ilara's supernatural reflexes and the Duskrunner's adaptive suspension. Incoming transmission, the vehicle system suddenly announced. Military frequency. Ilara exchanged a worried glance with Marcus before accepting the call. A stern human face appeared on the display, a man in his 50s wearing a colonel's insignia. Duskrunner vessel, this is Colonel Hargrove of the Frontier Military Coalition. You are entering a restricted zone. Change course immediately or face intervention. This is Dr. Ilara Knox, she responded evenly. We're on a rescue mission to retrieve my sister, Dr. Kalara Knox, from the Northern Research Station. We have authorization from Outpost Helios. The colonel's expression hardened. The Northern Station suffered a catastrophic accident. There are no survivors. Turn back now. We're receiving her vital signs, Marcus interjected. She's alive in an emergency bunker, but barely. We're her only hope. I repeat, turn back now. This is your final warning. The transmission cut off abruptly. He's lying, Ilara said through gritted teeth. That was no accident. They tried to kill her to cover up what she found. As if to punctuate her words, the sensors blared a warning. 2 aerial vehicles were approaching rapidly from the north. Military interceptors, Ilara confirmed grimly. Heavily armed. Can the Duskrunner evade them? Not in open terrain. Our only advantage is maneuverability in difficult landscape. She swerved sharply, taking them down a narrow ravine where the larger aerial vehicles couldn't follow directly. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse through the maze-like formations of the shattered lands. The interceptors circled overhead, occasionally firing warning shots that struck progressively closer to the Duskrunner. They're hurting us, Marcus realized as they were forced to change direction yet again. Driving us away from the research station. Ilara's star-flecked eyes narrowed in concentration. There, she pointed to a particularly unstable-looking rock arch spanning a deep crevasse. It's risky, but if we can get across that, there's a network of caverns beyond. The interceptor's sensors won't be able to track us underground. The approach to the arch was treacherous, loose scree that shifted under the Duskrunner's wheels, threatening to send them sliding into the abyss below. Ilara navigated with absolute focus, her hands steady despite their exhaustion. The arch itself looked barely wide enough for the vehicle. As they approached, Marcus could see concerning cracks in the stone structure. Ilara, it won't hold our weight. It doesn't need to hold for long, she replied. Just long enough. The Duskrunner shot forward, accelerating rather than slowing as they hit the arch. The stone beneath them immediately began to crumble. For a heart-stopping moment, they were suspended over the chasm as the arch disintegrated beneath them. Then they were across, the Duskrunner's wheels finding purchase on the opposite side just as the entire arch collapsed into the crevasse. One of the interceptors, following too closely, was forced to pull up sharply to avoid the falling debris. Ilara didn't slow, guiding the vehicle directly into a dark opening in the rock face ahead. The cavern swallowed them, darkness replacing the blood-red daylight. External sensors compromised, the vehicle announced as they navigated by the Duskrunner's forward lights alone. Calculating alternative route. The cavern system was extensive, a three-dimensional maze of tunnels and chambers. In places, strange crystalline formations similar to those in Kalara's transmission lined the walls, glowing faintly with an inner light. These must be what Kalara was studying, Marcus said, scanning the formations with his tablet. The energy readings are unusual, not like any crystalline structure I've encountered. We need to keep moving, Ilara urged. The military will find another way to intercept us. After what felt like hours navigating the underground labyrinth, the Duskrunner's navigation system announced they were approaching the research station's coordinates. We're less than a kilometer away, Elara said, hope and fear warring in her voice. But I'm not detecting the surface structures. As they emerged from the caverns onto a vast, crater-like depression, the reason became clear. The research station had been completely destroyed, not just damaged, but obliterated. Smoking debris was scattered across a radius of several hundred meters. Whatever had happened here had been catastrophic and deliberate. The bunker, Marcus said quickly, checking his tablet. The signal is still active. It must be underground, protected from the blast. They drove the battered Dusk Runner across the debris field, following the strengthening vital sign transmission. Near the center of the destruction, a partially exposed metal hatch was visible among the rubble. There! Elara cried, bringing the vehicle to a halt. They rushed from the Dusk Runner, tools in hand, working frantically to clear the debris from the hatch. The bunker's external control panel was damaged but still functional. Elara's fingers flew across the keypad, entering override codes. With a hydraulic hiss, the hatch unlocked. They pulled it open together, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. Power systems compromised, Elara noted, activating her personal light. Emergency reserves only. They descended quickly, Marcus carrying his medical kit, prepared for the worst. The bunker was small, 2 rooms designed for temporary emergency shelter. In the main chamber, life support equipment hummed on minimal power. And there, on a medical cot, lay Kalara. Even to Marcus's human eyes, the resemblance between the sisters was striking. Kalara's silvery blue skin was dangerously pale, the bioluminescent ridges along her temples flickering weakly. Her breathing was shallow and labored, each breath clearly painful. Kalara, Elara whispered, rushing to her sister's side. We're here. We made it. Kalara's star-flecked eyes opened slowly, focusing with effort. Elara, she managed weakly. You came. Always, Elara replied, gripping her sister's 3-fingered hand. Marcus immediately began medical assessment, connecting his more advanced equipment to the bunker's systems. Multiple internal injuries, significant blood loss, compromised pulmonary function, he reported clinically, hiding his concern behind professional detachment. We need to stabilize her before moving her. As he worked, administering regenerative compounds and setting up a portable oxygen concentrator, Kalara's gaze fixed on him. Human, she observed weakly. Doctor? Dr. Marcus Patel, he confirmed with a reassuring smile. Your sister kidnapped me from Outpost Helios. A faint luminescent pulse, Neridian laughter, briefly brightened Kalara's features. She always was dramatic. Save your strength, Elara urged. We need to get you to a proper medical facility. Kalara's expression became urgent. The crystals, she whispered. Did you see my data? Yes, Elara confirmed. Ancient technology, dangerous if activated incorrectly. More than dangerous, Kalara struggled to explain. Planet-wide catastrophe. The military, they don't understand. They think, weapon. But it's a key. Her words were interrupted by a warning siren from the bunker's security system. Multiple vehicles approaching, the automated voice announced. Perimeter breach imminent. Elara looked at Marcus questioningly. He checked Kalara's vitals again. She's stable enough to move, but it will be risky. No choice, Elara said grimly. Help me get her to the Dusk Runner. Together, they carefully transferred Kalara onto a portable stretcher. Marcus maintained the oxygen supply while Elara led the way back up the stairs. They emerged from the bunker into chaos. 3 military transports had surrounded the Dusk Runner. Armed soldiers established a perimeter while Colonel Hargrove himself stood waiting, his expression thunderous. Dr. Knox, he called as they appeared. Surrender the patient and your data immediately. This is a matter of planetary security. Ilara placed herself protectively between the soldiers and the stretcher bearing her sister. "What you're doing is wrong, Colonel. The crystal formations aren't weapons, they're part of a planetary system. Exploiting them could have catastrophic consequences." "That's not your determination to make," Hargrove replied coldly. "Our scientists have been studying these formations for months. Your sister's meddling threatened to expose a classified military project. So you tried to kill her," Ilara accused. The colonel's expression didn't change. "A regrettable necessity. Now hand over the patient and any data in your possession." Marcus stepped forward, his medical credentials displayed prominently. "As the attending physician, I cannot allow my patient to be moved except to a proper medical facility. Any interference would violate medical ethics and interplanetary law." "This is a military matter, Doctor," Hargrove snapped. "Your ethics are irrelevant." The standoff intensified, soldiers moving closer with weapons ready. Marcus and Ilara exchanged grim looks, both knowing they were out of options. Suddenly, Kalara's weak voice broke the tension. "Colonel, you need to see this." All eyes turned to the injured Neridian. With trembling hands, she held up a small data crystal. "Complete analysis, crystal network. Activation protocols." Hargrove's expression changed instantly. "Give that to me," he demanded, stepping forward. "Only if you guarantee medical treatment." "And my sister's safety," Kalara bargained weakly. The colonel hesitated before nodding curtly. "Agreed. Now hand it over." Kalara passed the crystal to Ilara, who reluctantly approached the colonel. As Hargrove reached for it, she paused. "You should know," she said quietly, "that copies of this data have already been transmitted to multiple scientific authorities. Any attempt to misuse this technology will be noticed and reported." It was a bluff, but one delivered with such conviction that uncertainty flickered across Hargrove's face as he took the crystal. "Get the patient to the medical transport," he ordered his men. "These two can accompany her. Keep them under guard." As they were escorted to the military medical transport, a much more advanced vehicle than the Dusk Runner, Ilara whispered to Marcus, "It's not over." "I know," he replied softly. "But we've won this round. Kalara's alive. That's what matters right now." The military transport was equipped with state-of-the-art medical technology. As they lifted off from the destroyed research station, Marcus worked alongside the military medics to stabilize Kalara further. Her condition improved noticeably with proper equipment and additional treatments. Hours later, they arrived at a military medical facility hidden in the mountains far from any civilian settlement. Kalara was rushed into surgery while Marcus and Ilara were escorted to a secure waiting area, comfortable but clearly under surveillance. "What happens now?" Marcus asked quietly when they were alone. "They'll try to extract what Kalara knows," Ilara replied, her voice equally low. "But my sister is clever. The data she gave them is genuine but incomplete, enough to make them cautious but not enough to give them what they truly want." "And us?" Ilara's star-flecked eyes met his, complex emotions shimmering in their depths. "That depends on what we want." Before Marcus could respond, a doctor entered, a Neridian female in military uniform. "Dr. Knox, your sister's surgery was successful. She's in recovery and asking for you." Ilara stood immediately, but hesitated, looking back at Marcus. "Go," he encouraged. "I'll be here." As Ilara followed the military doctor, Marcus was left alone with his thoughts. The journey had changed him in ways he couldn't yet fully understand. He had crossed 2,100 kilometers of the most hostile terrain imaginable, defied military orders, and formed a bond with an alien woman.